Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Book Beat. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior, your host, and we have a great show planned for you today. We have our guest expert is going to be Dr. Sylvia Cary. So if you are a therapist or a mental health professional who wants to write a book, she's got some great tips and how-tos for you. And then in the next segment, we're going to have Reba Merill. She is an entertainment journalist. She's interviewed a list of celebrities that you just can't believe. They are unbelievable who she has interviewed. Everybody who's anybody in Hollywood. And David Rohlander also will join us. And he's written the CEO Code, and he's got some great advice for you if you are starting up a business, if you're a Fortune 500 dude, or whoever you are at whatever stage. He's going to help you, give you some great business tips. But first, I want to talk about something that happened this week in Los Angeles. And if you're a writer or a journalist, you know, on this show we talk a lot about how the world is changing, the publishing world is changing. And last weekend, Michael Hastings died at the age of 33. He was an investigative journalist. He started out at Newsweek magazine, and he wasn't happy with Newsweek because a lot of the best parts of his stories ended up on the cutting room floor. So he left Newsweek, and he became freelance. And the next time that we really heard about Michael was when General Stanley McChrystal was forced to resign as the head of our forces in Afghanistan, and that was in 2010. And that was because of a story that Michael Hastings wrote for Rolling Stone magazine. And he was pretty candid about revealing some statements that General McChrystal had made, which were not off the record, were definitely on the record as they were hanging out in Afghanistan. And so the general was forced to resign. So last week at about 4:30 a.m., the neighbors around the area of Highland and Melrose here in Los Angeles heard an explosion. And following that explosion, there was a car crash, single car crash, and that was Michael ramming his car into a tree. But the engine was blown free of the car, and so it was a rather peculiar car crash. And then we find out that a couple of hours before his death, he said he was working on a big story, emailed some friends, and he was going to have to go under the radar for a while. And on Wednesday night, the night it happened, the last email he sent was to WikiLeaks. And he said that he would like to contact a lawyer for that organization. And that was just hours before his car smashed into that tree. And again, people are saying that they heard quite an explosion around the time of that crash. So we want to celebrate the independence and the courage of Michael Hastings. He broke away from the mainstream. He really made his own rules. And ironically, that's something you can do, by the way, now if you want to get into journalism or writing. So whether you're writing a self-published book or you want to be a writer, get into journalism, I mean, you can be your own network. And in fact, Scott Lane was a professional videographer, and he was right in the vicinity seconds before Michael crashed his car. And so he rushed to the scene, and he got there before the fire department did. And he got the most incredible footage, which hopefully maybe will end up as evidentiary if people look into what happened here. And so this single-handedly, this guy who was not affiliated with CNN or any major network got incredible footage of what happened, of this explosion, of the car on fire, of all kinds of things. It's on the web, unedited. There's no website. It's Loud Labs. So if you Google Michael Hastings and Loud Labs, you'll find it. If you go through Twitter, you'll find it. And so hopefully Michael's life and death and how both were chronicled will inspire some investigative reporters to look deeply into this, which I know has already been happening. And it says a lot about how journalism has changed, how we have more freedom to investigate these stories, the risks that journalists have always taken. And Michael's life, I think, will be an inspiration to all of us in the field. So our first guest now is Dr. Sylvia Cary. And you're a book coach, right? Besides being a therapist, you are a licensed psychotherapist. Right?
I want to correct. I'm not doctor.
Oh, you're not? Oh, okay.
I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist.
I see. I thought it was doctor. Sorry. Okay. So it's just Sylvia.
Yeah.
Sylvia Cary.
That's be fine.
Okay. And so, of course, my first question would be, is because I do a similar thing to you. You know, I coach people too, and I've had therapists as clients. And so it's amazing that you've written a book just for them. What's do you want to hold it up? Do you have
Sure.
it? It's called The Therapist Writer.
It's called The Therapist Writer, and helping mental health professionals get published. And I think it's the only book of its kind out there.
It is. I've never heard of one like that.
There are books, How to Survive Your Thesis and things like that. But this is the first mainstream book on that topic.
It is. And therapists have special questions, don't they, about writing a book?
They do.
What's the one you hear the most often?
Well, the one I hear most often that therapists are most worried about is, how do I write about my patients, or how do I write about my cases without getting sued, without breaking the very important code of ethics if you're a licensed mental health professional, which is confidentiality.
Exactly. That's what I hear too.
Yeah. So I have a whole chapter in the book on how the art of disguise, how to disguise your patients, it's not enough just to change a name,
right,
or a birthplace,
right.
You have to change everything.
You can change gender, you can change description,
how many kids they have, age,
right,
who they're married to,
geographic location.
But if you say this woman is the wife of this important CEO of a very well-known company, anybody can figure that out. So you have to change everything.
So that is really an art, isn't it, for therapists?
It is definitely an art.
And I know they're the most worried about that. I run into that all the time.
Yeah. And if you absolutely can't change, if the story you're telling is so unique that person would recognize themselves, or people they know would recognize themselves, you can get a release. And I wrote 2 books that were published traditionally, and one was based on 21 interviews with women who had more than 10 years of sobriety, and the other was based on 18 interviews with men in their first year of sobriety. And I got releases for every one of them so I could tell their story. But if you don't get a release, then you have to disguise them.
Right. And that's really valuable information for therapists, because that stops a lot of them from even writing, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had people tell me that. Oh, I didn't know I could do that.
Right, exactly. So what are some of the other things that come up that are when a therapist wants, or a mental health professional wants to write a book, what comes up for them that's different?
Well, it is amazing that people will come to me with a book idea and they haven't done any research on it. And the first thing you should do, anybody, whether you're a therapist or not a therapist, is Google it. Look it up on Amazon.
Look up what you plan to write about, right?
I want to write this book on alcoholism. Well, whoopee,
Right.
If you look on Amazon,
it's 100,000 books
100,000 books on
right.
on alcoholism. So you have the trends, it's like tree branches. They keep branching off into new little twists. So you have to tweak it, you have to twist it, you have to find a new angle. So that's the basic research that you should do. To see if your book idea is even viable.
Right.
And then you want to make sure that title is taken, although you can't copyright a title.
But you wouldn't want to take someone's, even though legally you can do it. I mean, it's like, why?
There's so many, for example, I talk about the title, The Gift. That's been a movie. It's been 20 or 30 different books.
Right.
And why pick it?
Right.
Do something a little more fresh than that.
One of the things I tell my clients who say, well, what if I do what you're saying? And then they say, what if I find my book on Amazon? So I tell them, well, then take the next step. Get that book, study it, and take the next step beyond that.
Exactly. That's why it's like the tree branches. You branch out into a new little blossom on a different twig.
That's a great, that's a great image.
And you have to find a unique angle. I'll give you one example of there are many books on grief, and I heard a woman speak who did a book not just on how you get over the grief of the loss of somebody else, but what you can do when you're getting older to make it easier on your loved ones that you leave behind, by writing them letters and doing things like that. It's a legacy for other people.
Oh, that's interesting.
So
yeah.
it's a different take
Totally
on the
unique.
topic of grief, and there's so many of those.
Right, right. Totally unique approach. Now, there's a lot of talk about, having a platform, which I stubbornly tell people, I think a platform is something that you stand on when you want to paint the ceiling.
Yes.
And because I remember the days when the book used to be your platform, right?
Yeah.
But what do you tell
Yeah,
your...
now you have to be famous before you get the book.
Right,
written.
it's like a catch-22, right?
Yeah.
It's,
Therapists already have a great platform. And my book is, even though it's the therapist writer, it's for all writers. There are chapters in it specifically for therapists and many examples that are, recognized by therapists. But anybody can get a lot of out of it. And the therapist already has a great platform. They have their credential. That's a huge platform. I mean, you're already taken seriously if you have a license in something, and if you've had 30 years of expertise in a field, if you've had experience in a particular area. A recovering alcoholic can write a book, a memoir, because they have expertise and they can talk about it. There are therapists who are also recovering alcoholics, so they can talk about it.
That's true.
Both as a professional, and if you don't have the expertise, interview people who do have expertise.
Right.
So that you're like the journalist.
Right,
in
you
that
become
case.
a journalist.
Right.
And
And so there are all different kinds of ways. If you have an idea and you love it, do it. Just find a way.
And what do you think? Like, could be, you've published traditionally,
Yes.
right? And so now you're self-publishing. In fact, you've got your own publishing company, right?
Well, I like that we're indie published.
Yeah,
It's not
right.
self. It's
That's-
indie published.
Yeah. That's
Sounds so much better.
I know. I got to remember that. That's the new euphemism, right?
Yeah.
But what do you think is the best choice? Is indie publishing the best choice for most therapists who want to write a book, or
Not necessarily.
no?
I think sometimes the middle ground of university presses or academic presses, because many therapists don't have the time to do the marketing. And even Bill Clinton said of his first book, I didn't sell it because I didn't promote it. So no matter how high profile you are, marketing is everything.
It is everything. Even if you
So,
have a self-published book, it is.
So
hard, yeah.
if therapists don't want to or don't have the time, then I would recommend that they go after maybe an academic press where they don't have to get an agent first.
So you mean the time to write a book proposal, find an agent? Do you mean that kind of time?
Oh, it's so time, as you know, it's so time consuming.
it
A
is.
book proposal can take you 6 months to a year.
It's
And then trying to find an agent with it can take, especially now that so many have closed up shop and
Right.
publishers have stopped publishing.
and they want you to have a platform.
Yes, they want you to be famous.
Right.
If you're a movie star or you've just had a scandal,
Yeah, right.
then you can publish.
Yeah, or you were, famous therapist for,
Yes.
big
But
celebrity.
if you want to get a book out there quickly, if you want a book because you're a therapist and you do a lot of speaking and you want back of the room sales,
Right.
then by all means self-publish. You don't have to sell thousands.
And that's what you did this time, right?
Yeah.
And how are you finding that experience as a therapist, getting out there?
It's been slow, and I had a personal. My husband died just 6 months ago, just after the book came out.
Oh.
So that sort of knocked me
Yeah.
out of the ballpark
course.
for 4 months. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
just getting back to
kinda
it.
just
So
getting-
my story is not typical, but
Right.
you have to start the marketing as you're doing the writing.
Right.
And a platform is every talk you've ever given, every workshop you've ever done, every seminar you've ever done, any article that you've ever written. This is all part of your platform. If you sit down and write a list of all the things that you've done that are related to your book, you'll find that you already have a platform. and add to it.
Now you work with a lot of first-time writers,
Yeah.
so what is the biggest misconception that you find they have?
That it's going to be like Cary Bradshaw and Sex and the City, and you're going to be on the front pages and at the top of the bestseller list and have your book in all the windows of all the big bookstores that are really closed now. And you do a worldwide tour, and it's not like that. It wasn't ever really like that.
It was like that for a
some
few people. Yeah.
But
No.
you have to do it yourself, and
You do.
even big writers these days have to do the marketing themselves.
Even if you're with, as you probably know,
Yeah.
even if you're with a mainstream publisher, they give you about 2 weeks of publicity with the publicist who's overworked and, sends it out to the usual suspects, but it's not targeted publicity, right? It's just, no follow-up, right? And then in 2 weeks, you do end up doing all your promotion yourself, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, I get overwhelmed, and I have a book this thick of all the different marketing ideas. I know what to do.
That you should do.
But it's doing it.
Sounds like you need a therapist to kind of, straighten all this out.
And if you can't afford a publicist, and even that's not enough, you have to do it yourself.
And it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
So, folks, we're not trying to discourage you here. Let's look on the positive
it's fun.
side.
I find it fun. I love it.
So tell me, what are the reasons that a mental health professional, should want to do a book and get it out
It's
there?
the best and quickest way to gain expertise, credibility, to be known as an expert. It's the fastest way, even just an ebook. I'm giving a workshop on the 13th of July just on getting published, an ebook published. It's the quickest way to get credibility. Nothing works better. If you are the author of, you get better, bigger and better speaking gigs. You start on panels. You could write an article that, so and so is the author of. It's a great way to do it.
It is. I can tell you as a reporter. I mean, that's who we look. That's who we look for. Yeah, it gives you creds, gives you credibility.
And one thing you can parlay into another. The first book I had out got me a teaching position at the Learning Annex in the Valley, which Learning Tree in the Valley, which is now closed.
Yeah.
And that got me a speaking engagement at Betty Ford Center on addiction, because the book was on addiction. And one thing leads to another when you have a book out there.
Yeah, it does.
Do it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be long. An ebook, you can do under 100 pages. You can do a 75-page ebook on something that you already know about.
That's a good tip.
And it's ebooks don't have quite the credibility of paper, but you can do paper for free with CreateSpace, Amazon's publishing wing. And then if you do a published book through them, which is free, then they will move you on to Kindle Direct publishing for an ebook for only $69, around that. So
caution, folks, though, with CreateSpace, because I've seen a couple of things that have come out of there, and there were between 12 and 20 errors on each page of the ones that I saw. So,
but that's not their fault. That's the editing.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah.
That's why there's certain things you should pay for.
You should pay.
Good
Do you
cover?
tell them that?
Yes.
Pay for good editing, right?
Pay for an editor.
Yeah.
Pay for a proofreader.
Yeah.
I've got some embarrassing ones myself.
Yeah.
And pay for a good cover.
Right. Don't let a POD print on demand place like CreateSpace. Don't turn it over to them for those crucial things,
No,
right?
They do have those services, but then it's not free anymore.
Right.
So you might as well hire somebody on the outside that you know is good.
Right, because editing is so important, isn't it?
That's what I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So do you do editing as well?
Oh yeah, I do editing.
Okay.
I love editing.
Oh, that's okay, good.
It's the writing. That's how I love. I'm a rewrite writer. I love editing.
Well, good. Well, that's hard to find somebody who really has their heart in it, especially when it's somebody else's work.
Yeah.
So what are things also that we've just got a minute or two left here? What are the most important one or two things that you think mental health professionals should know before they jump into publishing?
To recognize that they have so much information in their brains from years of experience, not to minimize it, and it could be a help to many people. It's almost as though you turn around and you do a service. And don't get hit by a bus before you've got what's in your brain on paper. Publish an ebook, publish a book, and help other people.
Yeah.
And then you market it by going to those places where those people hang out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's psychologically satisfying to write a book. It's great for your family. My kids love to say, "Oh, that's my mom's book." And there are many perks to getting published.
So don't get hit by a bus tonight, folks, and get your story out there, before it's too late. If you're a mental health professional, you're probably listening to everybody else's stories all day, right? So get your own out there.
Yes.
So thank you so much,
you.
Sylvia, Cary, for being with us on the Book Beat. And stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We have got Reba Merill coming up. She is an entertainment journalist that has interviewed every celebrity in the world. And you should see the list at the back of her book. It's really amazing. So stay tuned. This is the Book Beat. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior. This is LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk.
Hello, this is Angela DeJoseph. Join me Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Pacific for the Angela DeJoseph Show. Join me as we venture into health, wealth. We're going to give you news, interviews, and entertainment. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, Live 365, Radio Flag, TiVo Radio, and now live on Facebook. Or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Dawn Christie inviting you to join me every Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, for my all-new show, The Dawn Christie Show. Join me as I discuss love, spiritual readings, your purpose, why am I born, what am I here to do. So don't forget to tune in The Dawn Christie Show at 1 p.m. Pacific, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV, reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Welcome back to the Book Beat. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior, and that bumper music was composed by my brother, Rick Fleischman, and I love it. Thank you, Rick. So we have Reba Merill with us today, and she is all about Hollywood. You've spent your whole career, right?
Just my desperate part of my career was about Hollywood. I really started in local television. I did a local talk show.
Oh, really?
I did 4 of them.
Wow.
But once you get too old or have too big a mouth, you have to find another career, and that's when I came to Hollywood.
And so you became an entertainment journalist, right?
Well, that's all that was open to me. It was movie stars when you come to Hollywood.
Well, yeah, there's worse things to do,
No,
well, maybe.
It was interesting because it came out of not a drive that I was going to become an entertainment journalist. I knew that I was a really good interviewer. Mm-hmm. I knew I would never go back on camera again doing a local talk show or a national talk show. But I also knew that I could interview movie stars on a press junket and never be seen if I could get 55 stations to carry my interview. Mm-hmm. And that's how I got to Hollywood.
So that was smart.
Well, when you're pushed up against a wall and you really want to do something, and maybe this is just as a woman talking, mm-hmm. A lot of men that I worked with were still working. They had lost their necks, their hair was a new color.
Right.
But they're not that fair to women.
Yeah. Oh no, it's horrible, isn't it? I mean, we've heard these stories. I mean, I can think of 3 or 4 newscasters who have actually sued, right? Because they lost their job.
But I wasn't going to sue. I became a blonde instead and just started over.
Cheaper. Yeah. Good
Yes.
option.
Well, but the thing is that, when you get fired and they replace you by someone half your age, they don't have to tell you it's ageism. You feel it. And when I came to Hollywood, I went out of my way never to age. I just lied about my age, but flaunted what my lies. So when I had a birthday party, I just took off 10 years and invited everybody to 10 years less. Okay? And never told anybody my age until I stopped working at 74.
You stopped at 74?
But that's because they thought I was 64. See?
Awesome. Wow. Well, whatever you're doing, it's working because you've had a fantastic career. And so, my reason for interviewing with celebrities was that I wanted to talk to sort of not just celebrities, but political figures. I wanted to talk to the movers and shakers. I wanted to talk to the people that, I had questions for them. I wanted to see if I could talk to these people, and that kind of drove me to get into it. So what was your reason? What motivated you besides the career thing? Was there anything else about talking to?
Well, I was very restricted because I was working for the studios. So every interview that went out that looked like Barbara Walters or Oprah had done it was really controlled by the studio. But they trusted me enough to realize that you don't talk about a movie to death to sell it. And so I used the movie star as the cherry on the top of the sundae, and we talked about the movie star. And because I was working in video, I let the clips from the movie do the work, and I used the star as the bait. Because once you saw this star coming to your local television station, if it was fun and intelligent and had something to say, the local producers would play it. They became my allies, and I was getting the most unbelievable airplay, and that's all the studio cared about. So they gave me a lot of freedom, and I didn't have to sit there and talk about the movie.
So you were freelance and sort of sending in these clips then everybody was pleasing everybody, the studios because the movie was being promoted, and the station because you got the top celeb, right? Is that sort of?
I created a win-win situation. Everybody was happy. And I was especially happy because I kept getting older and no one ever saw me because the pieces that I produced, because I was also a TV producer, never showed me. It only showed the movie star. And that's what I was looking for, a way to grow old, use the one skill that I acknowledged that I really, really had. And then somebody was willing to pay me.
So this is brilliant because was this the kind of interview where we kind of hear their responses but we don't hear the question, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you were totally invisible, but they were giving, because those interviews are great when they just answer the question. It's very focused, right? You ask a very focused question. They look great when they're answering. They're right.
And they don't have to repeat the question.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we set it up with a little narration beforehand, never putting the real question in, but setting up the situation that you're going to get the answer.
Right,
to.
exactly. So let me ask you the question people always ask me. You know what this is going to be. When you say, I interview celebrities and people ask you 2 questions. Go ahead.
Who's your favorite?
Right.
And who's the most difficult?
Exactly.
Which one would you like first?
Well, if you're willing to,
what are they going to do to me?
I know.
I'm retired.
Well, see, excellent, because I hedge on the second one sometime, although, sometimes I'll go ahead and tell the real story about a couple of people, one that had me in tears and I could never watch the television show again after I interviewed her. It was my favorite show, too. But what about you? So who is your favorite? As soon as you get your
earpiece in.
Yeah.
My favorite changed. My favorite originally was Cher because it was only the second big Universal interview that I had done. I was now on my own. I had been working for people, and this one was me. I got everything. I set it up, hired the crew, did the interview, cut the interview, got paid. It was great. And she was so open. And she let us shoot her all her personal pictures and all her personal everything. I couldn't believe it. And so I did that until I interviewed her again, and she treated me terribly.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't like the movie. She didn't like the director. She didn't like her co-star. So she took it out on the weakest link.
Your fault.
Me.
Yeah.
So I have removed her from my favorite, and I have now elevated a very difficult man who has surprised everybody with my interviews, Harrison Ford. Extremely shy. It is like pulling taffy to get him to talk. But not knowing really that situation, one of the things I always did is a lot of research before I walked in.
Right.
And the first time I went to interview, first time I went to interview him, I didn't know who he was. I kept looking at my watch. Can I get out of here? Because he was really boring. Oh, they're going to kill me. But it was for a movie called Star Wars, and it hadn't opened yet. Okay, so how was I supposed to know I was sitting with a superstar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the next time I go to interview him, I sit down, and I knew I had 20 minutes. And this was for Air Force One. And I said to him, don't worry about the questions. I know all the answers. Well, I didn't realize that translated to him was, I care enough about you. I did my homework. Mm-hmm. And so the first question I asked him, remember the movie's Air Force One, is you play such great heroes on the screen. Are you getting back at the bullies that used to beat you up at school?
Oh, great question.
And he looked at me and he said, I only told one person. And I kept my mouth shut because the truth of the matter is that one person put it on the internet and I got it. And he proceeds to tell the story. New kid in school, they pushed him down the hill every single day at recess. And he said something interesting. He said, I picked myself up, dust myself off, and went back up that hill. And don't feel sorry for me because all the girls wanted to take care of me. And I thought if there was one thing to symbolize this man, it was that statement. Happened in junior high school.
That's a great question. And as you and I both know, pulling something like that out of research and opening with a question or working it into the interview, it's just like magic. Yeah.
Well, most of the time I only had 10 minutes. So I had to break the ice really fast, get them to like me. First time around, get them to like me. Because Harrison Ford did something really nice. When I went to London to interview him, and I cannot remember the name of the movie, to be honest. And I walk in, and he's in the ante room of where we're going to do the interview. And he says, oh, I'm so glad to see you. And I turned around to see who was behind me. Didn't realize he was talking to me.
He remembered, huh?
He remembered, but I wasn't that sure. So when Jennifer Aniston said that, and I walked into her suite, she said, boy, am I glad you're here. I said, yep, you're lucky. Mama's here, and we can play.
Well, that's fabulous because, as maybe you've had this experience too. A lot of times I walk in as a journalist and I'm not trying to be anything but, and maybe years later, they maybe don't remember me because I was just another journalist,
I didn't expect anybody to remember me. I was one of 50 when I was doing the junkets. Now, in the beginning of my career, it was all one-on-one, and I was the only one. But that was 9 years, and they were called electronic press kits. And they were going out, originally, for the first job, they were going out to the 55 stations that I had put together, so I had my own network. But eventually, it got so big that I felt like I was running a Chinese restaurant. I have to tell you, I offered exclusivity to those wonderful 55 stations, and then other stations in those markets, because they were big markets, wanted it too. So I had column A and column B. You never got shortchanged. We had enough in the interviews to cut 3 minutes, and so each one of the stations got an exclusive interview in that city.
Your exclusive 3 minutes.
Yes.
So what was the story that touched you most that you heard from somebody?
Oh, no one has ever asked me that. That's interesting. I will say, I can't say. I don't think any celebrity touched me. I'm sorry.
Really?
Yeah, because I was working with other journalists on these junkets. And so I'm going to go back. I just got a moment. Al Pacino. He touched me because he said something that I didn't expect to come out of Al Pacino's mouth. And I do use it in my video when I show my video interviews. He said that he bought into who he was. He believed all the publicity about himself because he wasn't on the outside looking in anymore. He was in. And so a lot of times he didn't make the right choices. And I nearly laid on the floor because I didn't expect that. Also because I walked into that interview, and again, I had 20 minutes because this was for the entire world. I didn't, every piece of research I did on Al Pacino was, I hate doing interviews. I hate the journalists. Huh? And so I racked my brain how to break the ice. I walked in and I said, hi, my name is Reba, and why don't you just consider me a gunslinger from the Old West? And on my gun belt, I collect legends, and I'd like to add you to my gun belt.
That's a great opening.
And he gave it to me.
Oh, that's so I mean, that's very creative. So now, are you okay with the question? Like, who beat you up? You know, who?
Oh, Tommy Lee Jones.
Okay.
It isn't. It is, and I'm not even alone.
Yeah.
He does it to everybody. He sits there with his arms crossed, which we all know. Do we still have the therapist? Okay. And obviously he's, you know, his body language is saying, I dare you. So I have always had a very, very hard time with him. And one time I was so frustrated that I just put on another hat and became a dumb blonde, which I really worked hard not to be a dumb blonde. And just asked dumb blonde questions, and I guess he was so disgusted he answered them. I don't know.
Well, you met his expectation.
But he's really tough, and you know what? It takes all the fun out of what you're doing.
Yeah.
The idea is, and I said this to Russell Crowe, he liked to play. I asked him, I said to him, you always look different in films. You never look the same. And he says, well, and I said, and the only one that can do that is Meryl Streep. And he looked at me and he said, you didn't know? I am Meryl Streep. And so I came back quickly and said, I like a man that's willing to play. I mean, we're only selling movies. Let's not get too serious.
Right. Now we only have a couple minutes left here, but there were so many interesting things in your background we didn't get to.
I'll come back.
Yeah, anytime you are welcome on the show. But let's talk about now you have this EPK process because you say you got caught up in addiction just like some of the people you interviewed, right?
Well, the EPK is the electronic press kit. That's the thing with the 55
different.
stations.
Okay.
I have to be honest that I knew how to fail. I had been fired from 4 talk shows. Any one of them I would have spent the rest of my life doing and never come to Hollywood. But I came up because I was desperate. I was 47 years old and I had no idea how to deal with success. And I became the flavor of the month. And when I hit big. I hit big with studios wanting me, television stations loving me. And deep down I was scared to death. And so I added the one thing that I knew well. When I worked in television, I was very, very thin. I smoked, I drank coffee, and I ate candy. And I added candy back into my life with regular food. And the first year of working, I gained 40 pounds. It continued until I weighed 209. That we have a picture in the book, back shot of me doing an interview at 209. The truth of the matter is, I would never tell you I was an addict. How can you be an addict if you like dessert? How can you be an addict if you like food? I just like to eat. And I went into a 12-step program because I heard that they had a really great, clever diet with portion control. No one told me they were going to take away my 2 favorite things in the world, sugar and white flour. And I detoxed. Whoever heard of detoxing from dessert? And it took me about 24, 25 days to get the sugar out of my system. And it changed my life.
And you discovered you had the power to do that, right?
That's what the 12-step program did for me, because I saw somebody else living my life. And I realized that if they could do it, I could do it. That's what the power of the 12-step program is. I lost 60 pounds. It's been 22 and a half years. I have kept most of it off. I've kept off close to 50. And I'm very grateful. It's given me a life. I don't think I could have dealt with Hollywood, because the second half of my career, see, I get a second chance. I destroy everything the first time.
So it's fortunate that, you get...
I get a second chance, and that's where the big interviews came from.
Wow. Well, this is an extraordinary story, extraordinary career. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people contact you? How can they get the book?
Let's see. The book is on Amazon. I have a new book coming out. This book is called Nearly Famous, Secrets, Lies, and Videotape, because I did work on sex, lies, and videotape, so I figured I'd borrow it. I have a new book coming out in the fall called Nearly Famous, because that's what I am. I have never been famous. But it's now called Secrets, Lies, and Sugar. And it's got a lot of sex in it, but my husband didn't want me to put sex in the title, so we're just doing sugar
instead. Yeah, but now that makes sense given your story, because I looked at that title and does it have anything to do with that?
It has a lot to do with sex.
Yeah.
Sugar and sex go very well together. Listen, I'm supposed to say that I'm on Twitter, and you can like me on my Facebook page. I have never said those words before in my life,
so
go you
ahead.
Got a first.
Shamelessly promote yourself on this show. Well, that's what we want. Okay, thank you so much, Reba Merill, for being with us. And please stay tuned. Don't go anywhere, because we have David Rohlander coming up. He is a speaker and author of the CEO Code, and he's going to share real-life stories of success and failure from his work as a mentor and coach to CEOs and executives of Fortune 500 companies, mid-sized companies, and startups. So this is the Book Beat. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Starla Quarles, and I'm inviting you to join us every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. for a new show right here on LA Talk Live, The Dialogue, Real Talk, Real People. Join us as we discuss the topics that are relevant to today's generational leaders. So don't forget to tune in to The Dialogue, Real Talk, Real People, every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. right here on latalklive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio. Or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hey everybody, it's Miss R&B, and I'm inviting you to come and hang with me every Thursday night at 9 p.m. PST for Perspectives Corner with Rona Rowe Bennett on America Talk Live. Hear and see interviews and live performances from some of our favorite celebrities and personalities in entertainment, sports, business, and the wellness industries. We're getting lifted and we're going deep, talking about life and empowering the champion in us all. See you there.
Hi, and welcome back to the Book Beat. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior, and we're here with David Rohlander. Did I say that correctly?
Sure, that's good.
Okay, good. And you have written a book called The CEO Code, which sounds really interesting. But what's really fascinating to me is you were a fighter pilot in the Air Force, right?
I was, yes.
Yeah. And so I wonder, I interviewed some people for a book I did on early television, and they were flying P-51s and Mustangs and,
Sure.
The B-52s out of World War II. And they came back and said that there was nothing as exciting when they came down from this high of being a fighter pilot, there was nothing as exciting as being in a live TV station at that time. It was the 1950s.
Oh, okay.
Because I did a book on Space Patrol, and I've interviewed a lot of people at ABC. Did you have a similar experience? I mean, how did you get from being a fighter pilot in the U.S. Air Force to helping CEOs and going into a business environment?
Well, that was a very long journey, really. But I will say that I've never done anything in my entire life that compares to the thrill and the excitement and the exhilaration of flying fighters.
I would imagine, yeah.
Nothing has ever compared.
What kind did you fly?
F-4 Phantoms. It was 2.5 times the speed of sound.
Yeah.
2.2, whatever.
That's amazing. So do you bring that, what do you carry over from that to your coaching with these high-powered executives?
Well, I think it's the courage, the gusto, the can-do attitude, the make it happen attitude, the focus. When you're rolling in on a target, you have to have focus, even though there's any aircraft or missiles or whatever. So it's that focus. There are many, the creativity. There have been a lot of studies done after I was a pilot where they have found that it actually takes a lot of creativity to be successful as a fighter pilot. You've got multi-dimensions going and everything.
Yeah, you're really, your destiny is just in your hands. I mean, did you land on carriers or?
No, I was Air Force.
Oh, Air Force. Okay.
Yeah. So no carriers.
Right. But but tell us about your work now and why you wrote this book. Why did you write the CEO Code?
I wrote the book as a legacy. I have coached scores and scores of CEOs. I've run 3 companies. I've done a lot of different things. I've had successes and failures, and I've learned a lot. From an emotional standpoint, the thing that made me decide finally to do the book was my son had a baby, so I had a grandson. And I started thinking about passing on what I had learned, not only to my son and to clients and all that, but to my grandson. So the book, the CEO Code, is dedicated to Sixten, my grandson. So it was an emotional decision, it was a legacy decision, and it was something that I wanted to do because I had something that I wanted to share.
And what did you want him to learn from this book?
How to live a successful life with gusto. And the gusto comes, if you will, from the fighter pilot stuff. But you can do there. In the book, we talk about external and internal locus of control, which Dr. Roder up at University of Connecticut coined the phrase internal, external locus of control. Internal locus of control being where you have your destiny and you believe that you can influence your destiny from within. External, believing that, oh, poor me, I'm a victim, there's nothing I can do, the government has to save me, other people have to save me, my job is consequence that I had nothing to do with. And so naturally I'm biased toward an internal locus of control. And
well, a fighter pilot, you cannot be a victim when you're in that role, can you?
That's correct.
You don't want any of that victim mentality creeping in, right?
No. Well, it's not healthy, right?
It's death, probably.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So in the business world, what do you find in the business world? I mean, that people need your kind of expertise with.
What's interesting is when I got out of the Air Force, I knew that flying in the airlines would be pale by comparison. And I very deliberately said, I've done this, and now I'm going to move on. And then I had to decide what to do. So I ended up going back to school and got an MBA in finance. And then, interestingly, I thought money was important. So it was Dave the Names, Money the Game, and I chased the buck. Got an MBA in finance and went with Merill Lynch. At Merill Lynch, I learned a lot about money. I was very successful, fortunately, made a lot of money, got into real estate developing after that, and retired at 40.
Really?
Yeah. And so I was able to accomplish that. And then I realized that wasn't enough. And I refocused. And as I started to analyze where is the real problem that companies have, that my clients had, that I had, it was not money. Once you have money is only a problem or an issue if you don't have enough. Once you have enough, it's not. It's just the reality of it. And then once money is not the big driver, and which it is for most people, I understand that. It was for me. Then what comes next? And I found the next big thing was communication. lack of effective communication.
So how were you finding that lack of, did you want to communicate better, or you were frustrated because other people weren't communicating?
We
or?
teach what we need to learn.
Right.
So yes, I had some issues.
It's an honest answer.
I had some issues, and but I noticed when I was talking to my clients, I would give them rational explanations of their investment strategies and why to do this and why to do that, and then they do something totally off the wall. And I for a while I was just confused. But then gradually I realized that it was a communication issue. At least that's the way I coined the phrase. It's very complex.
You mean you weren't getting across to them, or they weren't listening?
I wasn't. Both. Both. And then I wasn't listening.
So is this what you call authentic communication, or is this what's one of the things you teach, is how to?
Yes, very much so. In fact, the most important, as you probably know, I'm sure you know, and many of your listeners know, the most important part about communication is effective listening. As a professional speaker, I also know that one of the most effective ways to communicate is with silence. When you ask a question, look the other person right in the eye and are silent. It's absolutely amazing what happens. So listening, silence, those subtle things are sometimes overlooked. And it's very, very important for effective communication.
That's very true.
And authentic communication.
So I remember, I think it was Phil Donahue, the talk show host, saying that he used to watch hosts and they would ask a question and then you could kind of see them thinking about their next question. And meanwhile, the guest is giving an answer and you're missing all of the jumping off points that you could pursue, right?
Right.
So you work with people at all levels. Some are starting up businesses, right? Some are Fortune 500 executives. So what are you finding with these people? Is it what are other things besides communication that they are kind of stumbling blocks for them?
That's a great question, I think. I also mentor some MBA students down at University of California, Irvine, and I do that as well. And I really enjoy that. And I think one of the big stumbling blocks that people have is that they don't take the time to reflect and really understand not only what their strengths are, but what their life is all about. In my coaching, we do a process that we call Future by Design, and really thinking about what is it you want your life to become. Many people have goals of what they want to have, and so they want this, they want that, things, money, toys, etc. But people don't necessarily give enough time to thinking about what they want to become. Sort
of seeing you in the context of your life, right?
Yes. And so what is it you want your life, you've heard the, it's almost cliche, but what would the eulogy be? If you were going to write your own eulogy right now, what would it be? In fact, I actually used that line with a client last week because he was struggling with it. And the idea of what is it you want to leave behind? Many people are thinking it's important what they gather. When I was at Merill Lynch, I found there was this control issue, and you see very, very wealthy men, some or women, they want to control and hold on to it, but they can't. My dad told me when I was a very young man, there are no pockets in the shrouds, and the shrouds are what they used to wrap bodies in, right? There's no. When you're dead, you're dead.
Yeah.
You don't take anything with you.
Right. So, what kind of answers do you get from people? What do they tell you when you ask that question?
Well, often they don't have an answer. It's very interesting. So it does. And so you have to lead them through it, and that's what coaching and mentoring is all about, is helping them discover for themselves. I don't know the answer to the question, but they do. And a good coach and a good mentor, I think, helps them discover it for themselves, because it's the same with students, especially true with teenagers. Only when they discover it for themselves will they do anything with it.
So what's your ultimate objective? Is you're trying to make them more successful, obviously, but you're trying to, it sounds like there's something deeper than that you're aiming for in your coaching.
I believe that you, me, anyone will be most successful and most happy and most fulfilled when they identify what their core values are, and then they live their life based upon those values. And so I am hoping that through my work, I help people discover those core values And obviously, I have a bias, as I've already expressed that, in that money is not the end-all, be-all. Now, look at our society. Most people, especially people that don't have enough, think it's all about money, but it's not. It's not.
Well, the money represents the freedom, probably, to them,
Well,
right?
for some, that's a part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But go talk to the Dalai Lama or whatever, and I don't think he would agree with that.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely true. The two don't necessarily go together.
And so I'd say that that's almost a misconception when people believe that, when they think when they have enough money. In fact, when I was at Merrill Lynch, I found that many of my wealthy, and I worked with very wealthy clients, and many times the most wealthy clients, their biggest problem was the fear that they were being befriended or they were being pursued by other people because they wanted their money, or they were worried about other people taking their money away, which was really kind of sad.
It's very sad, because once they worked so hard and been stressed out, to get to this point, you'd think that the stress might, ease up, but they're worried about hanging on to it, right?
Right. I have a very good friend, a client who's a very successful attorney down in Orange County, a lady. And she says, I have the best friends money can buy.
Really? She actually says that.
She says it. She's kind of a unusual lady.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest obstacle that you see your clients run into? I mean, what is, we've talked about a lot of them here, but is there anything else that you see over and over again and you want to just kind of,
wake up and
wake them up there? Yeah.
They don't stop and take time to reflect, and therefore they get all wrapped up in being busy, chasing their tail, doing pleasing many masters. You can say it many different ways, but they're very intense, they're very excited, very dynamic, and very intense doing what?
They kind of rush from one thing to another. There's this busyness. I've seen this too, right? It's just like filling the I kind of think of it as maybe blocking the pain sometimes.
Oh, it is. Yeah. It's like I have put together a list of 7 really serious, severe situations that can destroy an individual, can destroy a marriage, and can destroy a company. And the first one on the list is the workaholic. And what's really interesting to me is how I get pretty involved with people when I coach them and when I get involved. And as you get to know their lives and what's really going on, what becomes apparent is what I'm about to share with you. And that is that the people that work many hours, beyond 40 hours a week, usually are not doing it because they love their job or because they have so much important stuff to do at work. It's usually for one of 2 other reasons. One, they're not happy at home for one reason or another. Could be a problem with the spouse, could be a problem with the children, could be some other problem.
Escape.
And the other is, forgive me, but they're incompetent. And therefore they have to spend all those hours.
Are they in the wrong profession, or are they?
They have not faced the reality. They have not stopped to think about, why am I doing this? And really, and that's, it's an interesting thing about coaching, I think. And I'm not saying this to promote myself as a coach, but if you think about who has coaches, athletes, singers, actors, many people. And the ones that use coaches the most are the ones that are most successful.
Yeah. I always say it helps to have help.
Absolutely. It absolutely helps to have coach, whether that's getting a good speaking coach or whatever it is. And one of the things that I think is amazing, it's kind of cutesy, if you will, and that is the only people that don't need a coach are those that want to be mediocre.
That's a great saying. Davism. Well, you sound like a fantastic coach, actually, because it shows that you seem to go very deep. You really get to the core issues and you care. The caring really does show. I think that people can see just from experiencing your approach, that's true. So how can people get in touch with you?
Oh, I'm all over the internet. David Rohlander with an H, Rohlander. David Rohlander, Rohlander. The CEO code is on the internet all over the place.
Okay.
So.
And website?
davidrohlander.com.
Okay.
Or the CEO.com.
And they can just contact you. That's
Sure,
the best way.
Sure. My cell phone is even on the internet.
It is?
Yes, it is.
That's very bold of you.
I'm an open book.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
And next week, folks, we have some great guests. Our expert is going to be Judith Briles. She is known as the Book Shepherd. She's an author and publishing expert that every author needs. And we have Dorothy Dale Kloss coming into the studio. Her slogan this year, she's going to have to change it next year, so you can start thinking of what that might be. Her slogan is one of a kind at 89. She's the author of I'm Not in Kansas Anymore, Love Dorothy, and she was a featured performer in the Palm Springs Follies, which means she's a dancer. She keeps dancing at 80 and plans to into her 90s. She's a very interesting person you're going to want to meet. And Arlene Blix, who has written a very original and moving book called Blindsided, a journey of love, loss, grief, and survival. She and her husband Glenn were both health experts who were blindsided by a devastating disease, and she chronicles this in her book. So thank you for joining us. Stay tuned to LA Talk Live, and we'll see you next week here where we're LA Talk Live, more than just talk.
Thank you for tuning in to LA Talk Live, reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we're more than just talk. Stay tuned.